What's up guys, it's Kristen here today with my October/late September wrap-up. This was actually a really great reading month for me because I'm actually pretty harsh with my ratings. If I give a book 5 stars, that means it was like World Series level perfection. It changed my life in some way. So even if I give a book 4 stars, it means I really did love it. And now every month I try to read a book from a different genre because I get bored easily and I like to change it up. So the first book I read was in the non-fiction category, and it was The Devil in the White City by Erik Larson. This is the story of the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, and it's really about how the architects overcame so many obstacles in order to create this amazing event and display of architecture, even when everyone was betting against them to fail. And then the devil part of the title is about a Dr. Holmes who was living in Chicago at the time, and he is considered America's first serial killer. And when he heard that Chicago would be hosting the World's Fair, he built a hotel and designed it specifically so that he could murder people in it. There were pipes that could go into rooms that could gas people and incinerators in the basement. It's so crazy to think that this is a true story reading it. In the end, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars because I found it did drag a little bit in the construction parts, and I really wanted to hear more about when the fair was actually open and what the people would have experienced walking around the exhibitions. But bonus, this is definitely going to be made into a movie. Martin Scorsese is set to direct, and Leonardo DiCaprio is going to play Dr. Holmes the serial killer. So, you know, us book nerds, we always want to read the book before the movie comes out. And if you want to check out my full review, you can click here, or I'll link it in the description below. Next, for some paranormal fiction, I have The Witch's Daughter by Paula Brackston. The story follows the main character, Elizabeth Hawksmith, who is living a quiet life in the countryside in England, but when she befriends a girl in the town, she ends up revealing that she's actually a 384-year-old witch. So the book is really her telling him the story of how she became a witch back in the 1600s and what she experienced through the centuries and how there's still a warlock out there threatening her life. In the end, I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. I really couldn't pin down what I wasn't enjoying because I actually liked the writing and specific scenes were really interesting. But then I realized it's just really depressing because nothing good ever happens to Elizabeth. And I found that I was never really excited to read it. It started to feel more like a chore to pick it up. For my middle grade read of the month, because it's this time of year, I decided to reread Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. I've only actually read this once when I was about 12, so you could say I was due for a reread. But obviously I've watched the movie about 1,000,000 times, and reading it I was so surprised how closely they stuck with the book. The only big scene that they didn't include is when Harry, Ron, and Hermione go to Nearly Headless Nick's Death Day party with all of the ghosts there, and I thought that would have been a really cool scene in the movie. Next, for my classic read of the month, I picked up The Mammoth, East of Eden by John Steinbeck. This book is so beautiful, I can't believe it took me this long to read it. This is the epic story of 2 different families set mostly in the Salinas Valley of Northern California, and it follows them through the generations, and the one family, the Hamiltons, is actually based on Steinbeck's real-life family, and who are very poor, but they love each other so much that you just wish you could be a part of their family. And on the other side, there are the Trasks, who do have a lot of money, but they have horrible relationships with each other. Here's the character of Kathy Ames, who is probably the most evil character I have ever read, ever. She would make Voldemort look like a caring parent. And as the title suggests, there are a lot of biblical references throughout, specifically the story of Cain and Abel. It is 600 pages, but honestly, I flew through it. It's one of the easiest classics I've ever read. So of course, in the end, I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I would probably give it more if I could. I would recommend this book to anyone, even if you're not into classics. It's really not what you expect from classic literature. It's very violent and gritty, and all of the characters feel so real. My heart was breaking throughout it. and you can check out my review of it right here. Now for some science fiction, I read The Mime Order by Samantha Shannon, which was actually my book club's pick of the month. This is the sequel to The Bone Season, so obviously I can't talk about the plot too much. It is set in a futuristic dystopian London where some people have clairvoyant abilities, but the very totalitarian government running London considers them to be unnatural and hunts them down as criminals. The main character Paige, of course, has these abilities, and she's forced to work in this underground criminal network. But one day she is caught using her abilities, and she gets arrested and taken away to a part of London that no one thought existed anymore. And there she learns the secret that the government's been keeping from its people for the last 200 years. I definitely liked the Mime Order better than the Bone Season because, I can't lie, it is a very cool, unique world, but it's also a very confusing one. There's even a glossary in the back to tell you all of the terms and definitions. So in the first book, it's really a lot of world building, but of course, once you're on the sequel, you already understand most things and it just hits the ground running. In the end, I gave the Mime Order 4 out of 5 stars. I would recommend this series to anyone. It's action-packed all the way through. Paige is this badass female heroine character. I love the love story in it. Like I said, it is a very unique world. It's something I haven't read anything similar to. And there's supposed to be 7 books in the series, so you should jump on this train early. Next, I read another non-fiction book called Moonwalking with Einstein by Joshua Foer. This is the story of how the author took 1 year to train and compete in the US Memory Championships, where people can memorize an entire deck of cards in under a minute and can recite thousands of numbers of pi and perform these seemingly impossible feats of memory. And the entire premise of the book and the author's experiment is that anyone can become a mental athlete, as they call themselves, and that we all have the ability to memorize these vast amounts of information. You just need to learn the techniques. The author does explain some of these memory techniques, like the concept of having a memory palace, but it's also more about the history of memory and how throughout human existence it's been so vital, but in our modern world with technology to rely on, we don't even use our memories anymore. And it's gotten to the point where most of us don't even remember phone numbers anymore because we don't have to. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. The author's writing is so informative, but also easy to read and fast-paced and very funny. And if you want to check out my full review, you can click here. Lastly, my YA book of the month was Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. I've been avoiding reading this book for the longest time, probably because I've never been a big fan of contemporary books, but I'm so glad that I finally got around to it because I loved it. For anyone who doesn't know, it revolves around the main character, Kath, who is obviously a massive fangirl, and she writes fan fiction for a Harry Potter-like series. But when she goes away to college with her twin sister, their relationship really starts to deteriorate, and because she's a very introverted person, she's having a hard time adjusting, especially to the social aspects of college. I mean, it's a book about a book nerd, so of course Kath is so relatable, but the scene when she says that whenever she's upset, her and her sister will have an emergency Kanye West dance party, I died laughing because that's something that me and my sister would definitely do. And then of course there is the adorable love story in it. Levi is now one of my favorite book boyfriends, and in the end I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. So that is it for my October wrap-up. Have any of you guys read any of these books before? If so, please leave your comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!